Hello, good morning all. Yes, students, today we are going to discuss servlets, which is actually server-side programming. Which Java provides us, and it also considered as being enterprise application development. So today what we are going to discuss is the completely introduction to server-side development. Then we have to discuss the servlet overview architecture, in which we will discuss the interface servlet and servlet lifecycle. Then HTTP servlet class is being discussed. HTTP servlet request interface. Then HTTP servlet response interface will be discussed. Next topic will be handling HTTP GET request, in which we can learn how we can deploy a web application. Then we will also discuss something about the handling HTTP GET request containing data, HTTP post request, then redirecting request to the other resource, and the multi-tier application using JDBC from a servlet. So that was the agenda. So let me start with the server side, introduction to the server side development. To understand this, we must understand the tiered architecture. Yes, students. So this is the agenda for the whole class. Today's class: introduction to the server-side development, server-side servlet overview, or interfaces of servlet, servlet lifecycle. Then we will discuss the HTTP servlet class, servlet request interface, then servlet response interface, which comes under the HTTP servlet HTTP protocol. Then we will discuss the HTTP GET request, then web application, HTTP GET request containing data, then HTTP post request, and last we will discuss the multi-tier application using the JDBC from a servlet, which is a very important topic. As the name is indicating, we can understand that what is servlet. Servlet means the program code which will be get executed onto server. As we know, if we talk about the internet programming, it is having at least two-tier architecture, although it is having the entire architecture, but minimum it will be having the two-tier architecture, in which there is a server and another is a client. As we are the clients who access the server, which can be available anywhere, means remote server we are accessing. So how these information, or how we are accessing these pages, comes under this client server architecture. So if we talk about client server architecture, there will be one server and many clients can be there. but minimum 2 machines are actually included at one time. So client side architecture. This client is the user. You can call it end user as well. And this server is service provider, as the name is indicating, server. It is a service provider. So layered or tiered architecture is there. The old two-tier client-server model has been superseded by the multi-tier architecture prevalent in the enterprise application. It allows each layer to communicate just with layers above and below it. So what is this? If you can see, there is an image in the last portion. This is application, means user interface. This is client. This is server. And what we are getting from this client server architecture, suppose I want to access, let's suppose we will take an example of YouTube video. So YouTube video is being stored in a database of YouTube server. So how we are accessing it? Application browser means we can use any application browser. It can be my Safari, it can be Internet Explorer, it can be Google Chrome, any application browser is being used as user interface, and we can send a request to our server. So this is a request sending by the client to the server. Server process it and make comfortable equal or equivalent code for accessing the database which is already stored onto the server, and then retrieve the data and send back to the application. So if you can see, there are two headed arrows, and these two headed arrows basically means that the client send information to the server and server can send information to the browser. So tiered architecture is there. Benefits of having a tiered application is it encapsulates rules and functionality together, providing for easier and maintenance and development. Enhances flexibility and reusability of logic and software components. These are the benefits of having the tiered application. Allow developer to focus on the area of their specialty, for example, database, servers, and web pages. So if we talk about the last benefit, according to this benefit, there are three different layers. One is database, another is web server, and another is user interface. So some people are actually good in developing the user interface. Another is in the web server logics, and maybe some people are having a specialty to access a database or to manipulate databases or file system. So the different developer can do different work. So according to their specialty, they can focus on to the on a particular area. Server side development. For server side development, we require definitely a web server. A web server is a program running on the server that listen from incoming request and services those requests as they come in. So web server is a program. What is web server? It is a program which is running onto the server. So we had seen in the previous slide web server. So this is a server. On this server, there is a software which is running. And that software listen the things which is coming from the client and or the result which is coming from the database. So to execute it. Once the web server receives a request, depending on the type of the request, the web server might look for the web page or it might execute a program on the server. So as the server is the mediator between the data which is stored onto the server and the client. So whatever the request is been coming into the server, web server program find out which type of request is it. So if is it a request for the web page, or it is a request for a database, or whatever, it will always return some kind of result to the web browser. Definitely, if server get the request, from the user according to the availability of services onto that web server, this web server definitely return a request solution, or return a request's result. That is sure. Because for example, suppose you the server couldn't get the web page which is the requested by the client. So what it will result to the user? 404 error, page not found. If it is not, then if there is some web pages, then it will definitely return the web page. So we are able to open the web page. So it always return, web browser will always return. It will always return some kind of result to the web browser, even if it is simply an error message saying that it could not process the request. By default, the role of web server is to serve static pages using the HTTP protocol. So web server is basically, although it is a server, it can do process, but it is for serving only the static pages, and it use a HTTP protocol. So this protocol, everybody should be comfortable with this, because if you do networking or you do client server architecture, then definitely there are some protocols in between the communication. So that is HTTP protocol between the client and server. You can say it web server. Web servers can be made dynamic by adding additional processing capability to the servers. By default, web servers are static, but we can make them dynamic by putting some special functionality into it. Server-side development. Server extensions. There are different types of the tools available for extending the server capabilities. First is Java Enterprise Architecture. Another is VB.NET, Active Server Pages. There is one more, JSP, then CGI and Perl. These all are the tools which is used to extend the server capabilities. Although we have studied that web servers are basically serve the static pages. But to make it dynamic, we have to use the different tools. You can use any tool from it. These tools process incoming requests from the user and generate custom HTML page. So what these tools are doing, if we want to make some dynamic requests process, these tools process the incoming request, whatever their request is coming from the user. They convert it into the custom HTML page, means they change static data to the dynamic and then send to the customer. So we can use in that way. Next is HTTP. First of all, we must understand on which protocol we are working. That is HTTP. And this HTTP is its full form, everybody knows, Hypertext Transport Protocol. And this protocol is available in the application layer of your OSI reference model. The people who knows OSI reference model, who had studied the computer networks, then definitely they know what is the application layer. So this is the topmost layer where the user interact. At this layer, we are basically my network use HTTP protocol. So what are the application layer protocol? It uses application implemented this protocol, other protocols implemented by the OS. So whatever the application we are opening, this protocol has been followed. Means suppose we are using the web browser. In web browser we want to access any page. So that page is been or that page will follow the HTTP protocol, but otherwise opening the web browser, for this OS protocols will be used. Different applications use different protocols. For example, web browser / browsers use HTTP, file transfer utilities uses FTP, electronic mail application use SMTP, and naming server uses DNS. So different application and different protocols are there. So web browsers uses HTTP. REST, the file transfer, if you want to transfer a file, for example, client send a file from one PC to another PC or server. So what happen if there is a given note that you cannot upload 40 MB or 10 MB, more than 10 MB file to any page or to any mail or any form. What happen if you try to upload more than the specified limit file, it always gives you a error message. So there is a file transport protocol works. And electronic mail application, sometime you get bounced your mails due to some reasons. So there are different type of protocols which works on our client server architecture. Interacts with transport layer to send messages. So this HTTP also work as an interface between the transport layer and the application layer. So this is a pictorial representation of this. So first of all, there are two hosts, of course, client and server. There are two hosts. Process, there is a socket. Of course, this is a process where you are working. There is my client who is working on any process. Through socket, it send TCP UDP with buffers and variable. Either it can be UDP, means datagram protocol is being used, or transport control protocol is being used for sending the data on internet. Then it is being received onto the another host, and then it will be get processed. So controlled by application developer, this process, and controlled by operating system, it has been shown that these are the things which has been controlled by the operating system. And here again, the operating system of the receiver, and controlled by the application developer who is onto the application layer. Two parameters required for identifying the receiving process. One is host machine identifier, that is IP address. Local host or IP address be there. Host machine process identifier, port. So socket means from which port you want to send a packet. So socket programming is basically related to this, how we have to send our data through the port and then transmit onto the internet. Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It is a lightweight protocol for the web involving a single request and response for communication. It generally provides 8 methods. One is GET. It is used to request data for server. Suppose you want to send a request to the server, then GET method is being used. And POST, used to post data to the server. Suppose you want to send only a request, then GET method is being called. But if you want to post some data, you want to send some data to the server. For example, suppose I want to search my name onto the server, or I want to search my email ID onto the server. Then I have to send my data. For example, if you are inputting or entering in an email account, then you have to send a data, means your email ID and password. That at that time the post method has been called. But suppose if I am accessing only, like suppose I am giving in youtube.com on my URL, I am not sending any data to the server, then it will call the GET method. Then head, it returns just the HTTP headers for a resource. for that what resources you are requiring or what resources has been used when you are transferring the data. Put all allows you to upload a resource file onto a web server so that it be found under a specified URI. Then delete the resource file. Connect, it is used to connect. Options to determine the type of request server will handle. And then trace, it is used for debugging. So there are 8 different methods which the hypertext transfer protocol is providing to us to communicate with the server. So majorly we use get and post. Get and post allow information to be sent back to the web server from a browser. For example, when you click on the submit button of a form, the data in the form is sent back to the server as name equals to value pairs. So name is your variable name, and value is whatever value you want to submit. So as we create an suppose we want to search an email ID. So what we do, we got a text box in which we have to type our mail ID and then password, and then we have to click on OK. As soon as we click on OK, it will take information of my email ID as well as password to the server. Choosing get as the method will append all the data to the URL and it will show up in the URL bar of your browser. So there is a difference between the get and post. If you are sending any data to the server, we never use get method because this is a drawback of this get method. What is the drawback of get method? That it will append all data to the URL. So if we talk about, we use get method for my email ID and password request, then what it will do, it will append all data, means all in my email ID and my password in URL, and it will be visible to everybody. So we never use get method here. The amount of information you can send back using the get is restricted as URLs can only be 1024 characters. So there is a limitation for the get method as well, that you can only transfer 1024 characters through the URL. So if we want to send more data, then we cannot definitely use this get method. So a post sends the information through a socket. So the post method is send data through socket to the web server and it won't show up in the URL bar. So if we want to access my email ID and password, then definitely I will use get post method in my coding. This allows a lot more information to be sent to the server. The data sent back, it is not restricted to the textual data, and it is possible to send files and binary data such as serialized Java objects. So if you want to send some information which is actually you don't want to show the user or the application layer persons, then we have to definitely use the post method in our coding. And there is also not a limit of any number of characters in post method as it is into the get method. Now the HTTP headers contain information about the client and the request. As you know, if we send any letter to anyone, we can compare this information, this thing with a, suppose I want to speed post a letter to my client. This is my letter. So what addresses you specify, what methods or what information we specify onto this envelope, that first of all we have to give the address of the receiver and we also specify the address of ours. So client and the request contain information about client, this is my client, and the request, whether it is a speed post, whether it is a register mail, whatever. 4 categories of header information: general information, date, caching information, warnings. So general information is what? Which type of the data is carrying by this post. Entity information, body of the request or response. Which type of data we are sending into it, whether it is a check, whether it is a letter, or whether it is a notes, whatever. But in case of our computers, entity information means body of request and response, which type of the data you want to send and what will be its length. Then request information means information about the client. For example, cookies, types of acceptance, acceptable response. These all are the information which is called as request information about the client. Then request information, information about server. So both information is available. As on to this letter, we are having two information. One is for client, another is for ours. Means first where we want to send this letter and who is going to send this letter. So both information is available there. General and entity information used for client and server. Then request information included by the client and response information included by the client. These all are the information which is available on to the HTTP headers. Then protocol, it is a stateless protocol. Request response occurs across a single network connection. At the end of exchange, the connection is closed. This is required to make the server more scalable. So these are the actually properties of the protocol which we are using into the client server architecture. So websites maintains persistence authentication, so user does not have to authenticate repeatedly. This is basically for the HTTP protocol only. While using HTTP, persistence authentication is maintained using a token exchange mechanism. HTTP 1.1 has a special feature, keep alive, which allows client to use same connection over multiple requests. So not many servers support this, but it is available there in HTTP 1.1. This is a version of HTTP protocol. Requests have to be in quick succession. Then tracking state. There are three different methods is being used in HTTP for tracking your data. First is cookies. As you can see, whenever you open a website, it asks for saving the cookies. Cookies are nothing. These are the variables or data, or you can say name of identifiers or identifiers which are carrying some data from a website. Line of text with ID on the user cookie file. URL session tracking. An ID is appended to all the links in the website's web pages. Hidden form elements. An ID is hidden in form elements which are not visible to the user. Some hidden information is also there. Some hidden elements are also been there in onto the website. So it's a good example is that if you think about like, or you click on a product which is been coming as an advertisement on your screen, next day onwards or after some time you will get the same product onto your screen for buying. So means hidden elements are always there which carries your information to the server. Custom HTML page allows the state to be tracked. HTTP status code. When a server responds to a request, it provides a status code. Web container automatically handles setting of status code. 5 categories of status code are in there: informational, success, redirection, client error, and server error. These are the status code which the HTTP use. Common status codes are 200, request was processed normally. Then 401, unauthorized access. 403 is forbidden. 404, requested resource not found on server. 405 is method not allowed, and 500 is internal server error. These are the status codes with the code. Many times you will get in this request 404, this error 404. When you open a website or when you open a web page, which is actually not available onto the server, then you get this message, requested resource not found on server. This is a very common error which we found in our daily life. So now we are coming on to the major topic of servlets. This was the background actually how the servlets are working on servers. So servlets basically follow the HTTP protocols. So now what the Java network capabilities are. First of all, it provides two types of capabilities, servlets and Java Server Pages, JSP. Servlets are basically, they both uses request and response model. And whatever the packages we use in the Java servlet are javax.servlet. It is into the extension part of the Java. That is why it is being used as javax.servlets. That available for servlet, and javax.servlet.http. These are the packages for servlet specifically, and javax.servlet.jsp. This is for JSP again, and javax servlet.tagxt JSP. That is for the extension of JSP tags. Then serverless web-based solution. It's secure access to website, interact with databases, dynamically generate the custom HTML codes. As we had already discussed that generally web servers are basically used static pages, but to make our content dynamic on our web servers, we use different languages. Here we can use the servlet or JSP. JSP provides some of same functionality without getting into details of servlets. So servlet overview and architecture. Servlet used when small portion of content sent to the client is static, and while JSP is used when the portion of content which we are sending to the client is dynamic. Only small portion is dynamic and rest whole portion is static. It uses HTTP plus URL is being required, that is Uniform Resource Locator. Servlets communicate between clients and the servers using HTTP. Client sends HTTP request. Servlet containers receive that request, direct it to the appropriate servlet. Servlet does processing, including interacting with the databases, and then return the result to the client in the form of HTML document. So this is the whole complete process for what the servlet do. Suppose I am a client sending a request to the server, and on this server servlets are used. What it is doing? First of all, it will receive a request, client request. First step, client request is being received onto this page of server. Then it directs, because it is not compulsion that there is only one servlet, there can be many servlets. So it will direct according to the request servlet. It will direct to that particular portion of my servlet and call that function which do processing. It may be interaction with the database. Then it will return the result to the client in the HTML document form. So this is the main function of our servlets which they do. Interfaces which we use for servlets are interface servlet. It's a name of a interface servlet, and the servlet lifecycle. We will discuss both. Interface, name of the interface is servlet. All servlet must implement this interface. All methods of interface servlet are invoked by the servlet container. So as in Java, everything is being used, or it is being extended, either extended or implemented by the class or interface. If you have a class, then you have to extend it from the base class. But in case of servlets, we have interfaces, and in this interfaces, major interface name is servlet. So if I want to drive a class ABC, we have to implement that servlet interface. So this class has been created. Further, we will definitely define or all the methods which has been declared into the interface servlet. So servlet lifecycle basically having 4 methods. First is init method. As we had seen into the previous tutorial, applet is also having the init method in its life cycle. Means init means initialize. So servlet as well having the init method to initialize it into the memory. So servlet container invokes the servlet's init method before servlet can respond to the first request. So first of all, whatever is been whatever the function or whatever the request we get onto the servlet, it first of all call the init method, which is for initialization all the information. Then servlet service method handles request, means it will receive the request of client, then it will process, then it will send response to the client. Everything has been done with the service method of our servlets. So a servlet will always have a service method which will handle all these things. Servlet service method called once per request runs in a thread, and service method is basically run into the thread. What is the meaning of that? Because it do parallel processing. A single server can have many services call, because one server is there and many client can be connected onto it. So if a server take a request, it always run this service method into a thread. Suppose there is 2 client or 3 client or 4 or many clients who are requesting some request from the server. They definitely send request to the server, and what the server will do, it will create different threads for the different requests, and each request is being deal separately in separate thread. They will not basically interfere into that. So for explanation of this, you can understand, if you have a browser, one time you are opening YouTube. In one tag you are opening Google Chrome, Google Gmail you can open. In another tab you are opening the Facebook. Then many more websites you are opening side by side. How it is happening? Our web server is one who is providing you the services, and Facebook data is never been inserted into your Gmail, and Gmail is never been inserted in YouTube. This is just because of that, because each and every service is being opened into the new thread of your servlet or yours on your server. And last method is your servlet's destroy method, which is exactly similar to the applet's destroy method. We had discussed this applet in last tutorial. So if you want that the all things regarding to the applet, you can go and see the applet tutorial as well. Servlet destroy method and releases all the resources as soon as you will just close the tag from your browser. It release all the resources which is being used onto the server and make it available to the other requests. Interface servlet and the servlet lifecycle in detail. Servlet implementation, two abstract classes implement servlet interface. First is generic servlet, which is available into the javax.servlet package, and HTTP servlet, this is available into the javax.servlet.http subpackage. And service method, there are 2 service methods. One is request, another is response. So service request has been sent from client to server, and response has been sent from server to client. So this is a life cycle. As soon as we create a servlet, it initialize into the memory. It been initialized until it is unloaded. So if it is not get initialized, it is failed. It is directly reached onto the unload, as the arrows is saying. Because if we see after initialize, either we will go on to the available services or we can reach on to the unload. If suppose there is an error, suppose you are requesting to open a website which is not available, means abc.com, which is not available. So what it will what will happen? It unload. It goes on to the unload. It destroy the request and send a message of 404 to the client. But if it is not, it is available for services, then it will call the servlet method and send the servicing request. If unavailable servicing, then it will send an exception to the with the message unavailable for service, and then destroy and then unload. So this is the whole complete process of servlet, which is executed onto the server. This is another form of servlet lifecycle. First step, load servlet class. Then it will create a servlet instance. Then it will call the init method. As soon as it will call the init method, means my servlet is ready to get service, and call the service. It can be request or it can be a response service. So call the service method by passing some parameters. This is a method which is being called here. It always takes two parameter. In init method it takes only one parameter. As soon as the services has been ended, it go and call the destroy method. So my servlet is been destroyed, or release all the resources which is been required by the servlet. There is another method. It is detailed method, through which we can understand how the servlet lifecycle is being carried out. So servlet container is there. First of all, it create a thread pool. As I had already discussed, that it will create each and every response into the another thread or in a separate thread. Whatever the request is been coming, a thread is been created. Thread has been created, it initiates servlets. So servlet method is been called. At that time, servlet is been started. It call init method for initializing its states. Then it allocate request to the thread, means service method is been called up. So now it will perform, first of all it will perform the initialization. After allocating request to the thread or calling the service method, it do start servicing, and it will perform service until unless it will not be finished. Maybe there may be a single request thread, it may be more than one service call. So both service calls will be performed. Services, as you can see, allocate request thread, means HTTP request 1 is being called there. It will call the service method. As soon as service method is called, it will perform. It start performing services. So perform services is there. If in the same time HTTP request is being came to the same servlet, then it allocate the another thread, means there is two threads, two requests are coming. So call for the service method. As soon as the method has been called, it start performing the services. So perform services is there. As service 1 is been finished, it block for all further requests, wait for active threads to end, then terminate the thread pool and call destroy method, and finally it terminate the servlet. So this is the whole complete way in detail how the servlet lifecycle work at the back end of our servers. So there is some syntaxes of different methods which we use in servlets. First of all, this is init method, which is returning nothing, but it is taking a object of servlet config class. It is used actually to create or initialize the servlet. Then servlet config is another method, or this is another method, get service servlet config, which returns the servlet config type of object from where it has been called. So if when the init method called, the servlet config function will call the get servlet config method, and for this a servlet is been created. A string, this is a return type, get service servlet information. Suppose you want to get information of the servlets, then what you have to do? You have to call the get servlet information function, info function. And service method is there. Service method is first of all, there is two parameters. I already told there is two parameter in the service method. One is request, another is response. So what method or what parameter is being used, it depends whether it is a request from the client or it is a response from the server to the client. It depends. And last is the destroy function, which basically terminate the servlet container and it make free all the resources which has been taken by the servlet for the smooth execution of the client request. Now the HTTP servlet class. There are two ways to create a servlet. One is implementation of the servlet interface or HTTP servlet class. So web-based servlet typically extends the class HTTP servlet. HTTP servlet overrides the method service. Two most common HTTP requests are there, get and post. As we had already discussed the HTTP protocol in detail, there are two type of the services. One is the get and another is the post. So get is for both methods can be used to send information to the server, but both are having some different logics and limitations. So we have to think which method we have to call or which method we have to use. So method do get respond to the get request, and method do post is these two are the name. Do get and do post, these are the name of method. Do get method and do post. Do get method respond only for the get request, and do post method respond only for the post request when we submit our HTML form. HTTP servlet class, it is having request and response, two type of objects which is make enable interaction between the client and server. So HTTP servlet request interface. So these are the request interface and response interface. Web server creates an HTTP servlet request object, passes it to the servlet service method, that is do get or do post, and then HTTP servlet request object contain the request from the client. These are the three functions which the HTTP servlet request interface do. First of all, it create an object, then it passes the information, whether it is do get or do post method is being used for the servicing, and then it will send the request back to the client. These are the methods which has been declared into the HTTP servlet request interface. One is get parameter, which is used to get which type of the request is been passed, either it is get or post. Then enumeration is a return type, get parameter name. First is get parameter, then another is get parameter name. What parameter is getting into the do get and do post method. Then parameter value is been accessed by the method do get parameter value. If you are sending some cookies or some parameters, some identifier, some hidden fields is there, then get cookies function is been used to get the information what hidden parameter has been passed. HTTP session, this is a return type. Then get session for getting the session, which sessions actually handling this whole process. For that we have a function get session which will return the state of the HTTP session to client. Then this is a response interface which create a response object and passes to the service method of our servlet. Either it is a do get or do post. It is having some methods: add cookies, then have the get output stream, get writers, or set content time. These are the all different methods which when we will implement in our workshop, then we definitely do all these methods using a practical or practical example. Means we have to create a servlet, we have to create a client side information, means HTML we have to create. Everything we will do in the workshop, which will be held after 6th of March. So students or whoever is been viewing this video, please subscribe and share my video so that I will be connected to you all in further videos as well. So now servlet communication is there. For servlet communication, we can communicate with the 4 different entities. First is client during the request and response cycle. Another is servlet container, through servlet container, or we can use the other servlets. EJB means enterprise Java beans as well. With external resources, we can use databases, we can use EIS systems or legacy systems. Then client communication can be in the many forms. For example, request and response form. Request can be sent through the HTML browser or mobile devices, or it can be in the form of CSVs, or it can be in the form of the XML or serialized objects. So these are the different ways of servlet communication. So now what are the servlet APIs been used into the servlet for programming? That is javax.servlet, which we had already discussed. There are 2 packages, servlet and servlet.http, which contains 20 interfaces and 16 classes for the different purposes. Java servlet package can be extended for use with any application layer protocol. And do get, we can override the do get and do post method to provide the normal servlet functionality, or we can override the do put or do delete for implemented methods. And we can also override do options, do trace. There are different methods which we had already discussed. We can override them by adding our own functionality into it. Java servlet packages, it contains 12 interfaces, 7 interfaces implemented by the package and 5 interfaces implemented by the users. These are the servlet classes: generic servlet, servlet context event, then attribute event, input stream, output stream, and exception classes and unavailable exceptions. Generic servlet classes, it is having 3 methods: init, service, and destroy. And some environment methods has been set: get servlet context, get init parameter, and get init parameter names. So students, these all methods has been actually clear to you if you will do some programming or you do some workshop for this. HTTP servlet is having 8 interfaces and 7 classes. These all the interface and classes name. Writing a servlet, first of all we have to create a servlet class, then we have to implement the do get and do post. Both methods accept the 2 parameters, request and response. So there is one example which we will discuss. This is a package which you can import from anywhere, or you can create your own as well. This is a class servlet. This is a package which we are importing for the HTTP servlets. Then input output package is there. How we are implementing servlets? By extending the HTTP servlet class. So I can use the either using the classes or using the implement interfaces. So here I'm using this HTTP servlet class and I'm extended by login class by this class. So in this we are doing public void do post. If we are creating a method, service method is there. This do post is a service method which provide me a HTTP request first parameter and HTTP response, it is a second parameter. So we have to create it. Then we are inputting username by using the get parameter function. Then try is exception handling. In this you are telling what type of the content is coming here, means I'm going to use the HTML, means which type of the page I am using from the client side, because this is my server side. This is my server side coding, and I will code for the same from client side as well. This is a class which is used to write the method, whatever the value I am getting from the response, means the response is being passed from the client. Then this is the HTML code which is being embedded into the servlet, so that we can create a HTML code, or it will be displayed onto the servlet or server. HTML body tag, it has always been in quotes. If we are embed our HTML code into our servlet, then it always becomes in this format. Then thank you username, you are logged into the system. This is a message which the server is sending to the client, and then it will be closed, and writer is closed, and this is the exception handling. So this is a basic, very basic servlet in which the servlet is sending a message to the client, thank you, and then username, whatever the username which is from which we are getting the request. You are now logged into system. This is the only message which the client will get. This is a client side coding, login.html. We had created I had created this HTML code in which I had created form actions, servlets. This is the servlet method package where we had created this servlet. Then method post is being used. Input type equals to text name, and username is means if I had created a form which will be a login name, this will be the username, its length will be 40. Then again password, its length also will be 40, and there will be a submit button. As soon as I will submit this button, the value of login and password will be sent to the servlet, and as soon as user is been received here, username will be displayed, because here I am taking login as username and password as password, so it will be created. So thank you all. This was the example of client server architecture in which we log into the server by the username and password. So I hope you understand concept of the servlets. So thank you all. Please share my channel or subscribe my channel, and share this link to your loved ones or your friends.